Even though this isn't the greatest market to be selling your home in, many Bay Area home sellers are choosing to put their home on the market. In fact, we're seeing some of the highest inventory levels in the last 5 years across the entire Bay Area. So it stands to reason that many Bay Area home sellers are asking themselves this question: how do I sell my home for the most amount of money, especially in these challenging market conditions? Coming up on this Silicon Valley Staff Shot. When crafting a winning strategy as a home seller here in the Bay Area, there's really 3 things that we need to be focused on as we enter the listing period. And we're going to go over those 3 things. And by the way, if you're a home buyer in today's market and you're watching this video, first of all, good for you, because here's the thing. As a buyer, you should be putting yourself in the shoes of the sellers and understanding, what drives them, what motivates them. And this video is going to actually help you get inside the mind of a listing agent, a top listing agent here in the Bay Area. This is how I'm coaching my sellers. And there's a lot of agents out there that are coaching their sellers in some way, shape, or form similar to me. I would say that my strategy is unique in the way that I present it to my sellers and in the way that we actually go about executing. But some of these principles are shared amongst several of the top agents here in the Bay Area. So if you're a home buyer, you're watching this video, good for you. And whether you are a home buyer or a home seller in today's marketplace, I meet with home buyers and sellers every single day to help them craft the strategy that's going to help them either win the best home or get the highest possible price for their home. You can text the word consultation to the number down below. I will send you a Calendly link. We'll have a no strings attached Zoom consultation, put together a winning strategy for you and for your family. All right, so enough of that. Let's dive in to the meat and potatoes of this. What are the 3 things that we need to be focused on as a seller to really get the highest possible price for your home? The first thing that we need to be focused on as a seller is, of course, and this might seem obvious to you, the marketing. Now, the way in which agents go about marketing a property varies drastically from agent to agent. And there's really some core principles that we want to focus on as we enter the listing period, because every home is going to be different. But there are some core principles that we want to apply regardless of whether you are selling a $500,000 home or a $5 million home. The first key principle of marketing is that the first 7 days on the market are the most important of the listing period. Really, that first week, we're going to do a couple of things. We're either going to get lots of offers or we're going to get lots of feedback, and that's going to allow us to make adjustments before the home keeps sitting on the market. Because as a home seller, the most amount of leverage that we have is within those first 7 to 14 days of being on the market. The longer that we sit, the buyers understand that, hey, this seller has less and less leverage because they've been sitting on the market for longer and longer. And so we really want to maximize the marketing to drive the most amount of buyers into the house within the shortest amount of time. And there's lots of ways that we can do that. One of my favorite strategies is to actually pre-market the home. And so there's lots of things that we can do inter-agent, from agent to agent perspective, in terms of drumming up interest in the property before we actually go live on the multiple listing service. That ensures we have lots of buyers coming through the door the very first day that we hit the market. See, if we press live on the multiple listing service, and that's the first time any buyer is hearing about it, it takes a couple of days to get buyers through the door. But if we can do some pre-marketing on the property and really drum up that interest, that initial interest before we go live, then we can guarantee that first day, we're already getting showing requests. And that's exactly where we want to be. Speaking of showing requests, lots of agents have this mentality, and you might even hear some listing agents, some really top listing agents here in the Bay Area, coach you as a seller, letting you know that you need to make your home available 24/7. The best thing for you to do is to go live in a hotel for a couple of weeks, and we're gonna put the lockbox on this, and we want buyers to come see the home at any time, day or night, whenever they see fit. Well, in theory, this sounds very reasonable, right? We want to make the home accessible. But there's only one problem with that. In the perceived absence of competition, we're never truly going to maximize the final sales price of your home. And so if we have, let's just say, 10 buyers see the home in 1 week, and those buyers all go see it on their own accord at the time that works best for them. Well, we're going to get 10 buyers that perceive total absence of competition. They're going to go see it at 5 p.m. at night with their realtor. The next one comes sees it at 10 in the morning, and so on and so forth. But if we can get all 10 of those buyers to come see it within 1 to 2 showing windows, therefore, every buyer that goes and sees it is seeing 1 to 2 to 3 to 4 other buyers at the same time touring the home. All of a sudden, instead of their attention flowing to, hey, I wonder how much the seller is willing to knock off this list price, their attention goes to, oh my gosh, there are 4 other buyers that want this house as badly as I do. And in the presence of competition, our herd mentality as a human being kicks in. See, sales and marketing is all psychology, and most realtors lack the instincts to tap into basic human psychology. Well, as a human being, if there's a lot of other people that want something, guess what? I'm gonna want it too. And so this herd mentality, this artificial creation of a herd mentality can really positively impact our ability to drive price. Now, here's what I know. The final price or the final sales price is never gonna be what a buyer initially offers. But if we can get their initial offer up higher than it would have been originally, because man, I've got 10 other buyers that I'm competing against, I should probably write a little bit more than I was thinking. Well, that is their new floor. And most buyers psychologically will only be able to move up a certain amount from their initial offer. And so if we can raise that floor, we also raise the ceiling. To ensure that we create this presence of competition throughout every buyer's showing experience, we really limit the windows of availability that the buyers can see the home within the first week to 2 weeks. Now, after the first couple of weeks, we might want to taper our strategy if we have not sold the home. And by the way, most of my listings, I would say that over 80% of my listings sell within the first 2 weeks, but there's always exceptions to the rule. But 8 out of 10 times, we're really tapping into that initial marketing principle and that initial psychological principle of trying to get as many buyers into the door in as short a window of time as possible, so that there is perceived competition. And of course, if you're a home seller, you want to get into more detail into how we actually go about accomplishing this and achieving this. You can text the word consultation, again, to the number down below. More than happy to connect with you via Zoom and go over a tailored approach to your specific house and show you exactly what we would do to create those limited showing windows and really drive buyers into your home during a certain window of time so that they face the competition. Another key factor of the marketing strategy is ensuring that we have tailored the marketing to the kinds of buyers that we think are most likely going to be buying your house. You know, from an age range perspective, from a likes and interest perspective, you know, as a seller, typically, when you've lived in an area for more than 5 years, you're very privy to the kinds of buyers that are buying in your community at that time. And so this is actually where I encourage my sellers to strategize with me. And we actually brainstorm together. We say, okay, who do we think is the prototypical avatar of buyer in this community? And then based on that avatar, we reverse engineer our marketing strategy and the kind of marketing that we're pushing out there. You know, not every buyer likes the 21st century, like super sleek and modern marketing. Some of them like something that's a little bit more elegant, a little bit more conservative. And so every buyer is going to have a different kind of marketing that is going to attract them. And so we want to actually put the kind of marketing out there that's going to attract them. And it's not a one size fits all approach. And unfortunately, that's kind of what most agents do, is they have this like cookie cutter listing strategy, which by the way, like it works really well for agents, especially if they're, you know, only working in one area. They're like an area expert, right? And like they focus on this one neighborhood. Well, then they can do a cookie cutter approach because it's the same kind of buyer every single time. But someone like myself, I work with sellers all over the Bay Area. You know, we've worked with sellers in the East Bay, in the South Bay, as far down as like Hollister. Obviously, you list a lot of homes in San Jose, Fremont, Alameda County, Contra Costa County, Oakland, the Peninsula. So I've listed homes all over the Bay Area, and every single area, every single neighborhood, every single opportunity has a different avatar. And so we really want to reverse engineer and create a marketing approach that's going to attract the buyer that is most likely to buy your property. So that concludes my thoughts on marketing. Obviously, I have a lot more that I could share, but for the purposes of this video, we can move on. And of course, if you are interested in a consultation, we can go into a more in-depth approach in terms of marketing strategy. So you can text the word, again, consultation, to the number down below. Second thing to consider when trying to achieve the highest possible price for your home is the price. Now, here's actually something that I share with a lot of my sellers, and that is, I think of price really as a marketing strategy and a marketing tactic. And so really price can actually be categorized as a subcategory almost of the marketing. You're probably wondering, like, why is that? That doesn't make a lot of sense. Well, here's the thing. Price is really an invitation. This is not the price that you're committing to sell the home at. It is the price that we are actually using to invite the people into the home. A lot of sellers kind of get hung up on this. Well, there's no way I would sell it for that, especially if you're taking the underpricing approach. I would never sell it for that price. Well, not asking you to, but also asking you to look at some data. Because here's the thing, every neighborhood has a different style of pricing. And so we want to be congruent with the kind of pricing approach that other listing agents are taking in that area. For example, there are some areas here in the Bay Area where it's very customary. If the home is somewhere between $1 million and $1.5 million, if it's worth anywhere in that price range, it is listed for $999, $999. Okay, 95% of the homes are listed at $999, $999, even if the home is worth nearly $1.5 million. I know this sounds ludicrous, but here's the issue. Okay, is that a lot of buyers, they start to pick up on this. People are super smart, especially here in the Bay Area. They're going to set their search filters, even if they can afford a $1.5 million home, at $1 million, because they know that if they go to 1.3 or they say 1.4 on, say, like a Redfin or a Zillow, that's where they set their search limits. They know that those homes are actually going to sell for 1.8 or 1.7, and that's way out of their price range. And so they want to protect themselves and only see the homes that are in their true budget. And so as a home seller, you need to understand what is the pricing strategy that's going to invite the most amount of buyers that are willing to pay me the price that I'm ultimately willing to sell my home for. Now, this doesn't mean fire sale it or, put it on the market for $1. There are some crazy strategies out there, but there are a lot of sellers who are resistant to the idea of underpricing their home, when in reality, that is the best strategy for ultimately achieving the highest possible price. But every home in every situation is different. That's why when pricing a home, it's incredibly important to have a detailed strategy session when we're looking at other comparables, when we're looking at all of the market data to really determine what is the best approach for your home. Because again, sometimes underpricing the home is the best strategy. But there are a lot of neighborhoods, in fact, where a lot of instances in the last couple of years where I've coached my sellers to list it right at or even above sometimes market value, because there are certain situations in which underpricing the home is only going to result in absolute disaster. There have been many times where my sellers actually have told me, hey, we want to underprice the home and drive it up. And I've talked them out of it because I say, that's actually not the right strategy in this situation. And so it really depends on the circumstances, on your neighborhood, on what's happened in the last couple of months, how many homes around us we have competing against us. Listen, if we're in a situation where there's 7 or 8 or 9 other homes in a very small radius around our home, then underpricing it might not be the best approach. Again, it totally depends on your situation. So that's why you have to sit down and really come up with a custom tailored approach to your specific situation. But just understand that pricing and picking the right pricing strategy is imperative to getting you the highest possible price, because ultimately you picking the wrong pricing strategy can sometimes be even more impactful than picking the wrong marketing approach. Pricing is one of the most important factors when selling your home. And so getting that price right at the beginning is crucial. Now, if you want a customized data report that's going to give you some ideas as to how you should be pricing your property, you can text the word data plus your property address to the number down below, and I will get that information and those pricing strategies sent straight to your inbox. And finally, the third thing that we should be focused on as a seller in order to ensure that you get the highest possible price is probably the most overlooked thing in the entire listing and selling process, which is negotiations. As an agent, I can assure you that the level of competency amongst agents here in the Bay Area when it comes to negotiating on your behalf varies dramatically from agent to agent. And it's actually quite frightening how bad some agents are at negotiating, and also really refreshing to see how great some of my peers are at negotiating. And so there's a wide gambit of competency here in the Bay Area. But I can tell you there are a certain set of principles that will ultimately ensure that you're at least having the best chance possible at getting the highest possible price. The first principle is we want to encourage offers all the time. There's a lot of agents who kind of put up this facade and it's hey, don't even bother writing if you're not going to come in at this price, or, don't waste your time if you're not willing to do this, this, and this. And while that might feel that might invigorate those agents because it makes them feel powerful, at the end of the day, it's actually not helping your situation at all. Why? Because offers equal leverage. Offers equal momentum. And so any offer that we get, whether it's good or bad, we're not telling other agents that it's a good or bad offer. We're telling other agents that we have another offer in hand. And hey, my seller's considering this offer, and it would be great. If your buyer's interested in writing an offer, it would be great to see what they have, because at this point, my seller is seriously considering this other offer. And so anytime we're in a situation, especially in this market, where buyers might be a little bit slower to move. See, in a multiple offer market, we're consistently getting, 5, 10 plus offers every single time we put the home on the market. It's a completely different strategy. But in a market where a lot of times, or sometimes, we might only get 1 or 2 offers, the best way for you to create competition and for you to ultimately drive price up is through really encouraging anyone and everyone to submit an offer. And so whenever an agent reaches out to me and say, hey, would your seller be willing to do this? Or would your seller be willing to do that? The answer is always put it in writing and I will present it to my seller. Because in this kind of market where you never know what's going to happen, you always want to create as much competition as possible. Again, perceived competition. Go back to the marketing strategy. We want as many buyers to be in the home and at the same time so that other buyers see, hey, another buyer wants it. They don't know that that buyer is actually your neighbor, right? If it's an open house and you've got a bunch of people through the house and half of them are neighbors, they don't know that that person's a neighbor. They just see them as another buyer because humans were wired to think that like everyone else is just like us. And so the same principle applies when writing an offer. If we had 10 showings this last week and one agent calls me up and says, hey, Danny, would your sellers be willing to take this price? Or would they be willing to do these terms or whatever? I would always say, you know what? I would put that in writing and I will present it to my seller because we want to invite that in. Then guess what? I'm turning around calling the other 9 agents and letting them know, hey, listen, we've got an offer coming in right now. Seller's highly considering it. And if your buyer is interested in the property, I would highly encourage you to get something into me sooner rather than later because my sellers are really considering this one. And in doing that, we can then create a competitive environment, even if there wasn't one to begin with. See, a lot of times, and this is, again, I'm kind of ranting right now, but there are a lot of agents who, they get one offer and then they go to their seller and say, hey, let's negotiate with this one offer. And they forget about all the other buyers that want to come see the house. They forget that there were 9 other people that could be potentially interested. And so this comes back to negotiating competency, right? Well, how competent is your agent at negotiating for you? Well, the first thing that they should be doing is reaching out to all the other agents who showed the home as soon as they get an offer, right? And so that's what we do here at SSV. Now, this is assuming that we don't have an offer deadline. If there's an offer deadline, that is something completely different. And in a lot of situations here in the Bay Area, we are still seeing offer deadlines. And so there's a very good chance that if there's a high probability that we're going to be receiving multiple offers, we're going to be setting an offer deadline. Now, this is typically done through a couple of analysis. And so I have some benchmarks for my sellers, like, hey, if we receive this many disclosure requests and or we have this many showings and this many open house guests over the, a 7-day period, we're almost guaranteed to have 3 or more offers. And so if that's the case, then we're going to set an offer deadline. Now, one last thing as we wrap up negotiations here, another thing to consider is commission. And because of the new changes that were passed recently, the new National Association of Realtors Settlement has made it illegal. It's no longer allowed. I don't know if it's illegal or not, but it's no longer allowed to advertise that we are offering a commission to buyers' agents. And so when you meet with an agent, some agents actually might try and coerce you into pre-authorizing or pre-agreeing to a certain commission percentage to offer the buyer's agents. This is a bad strategy, and I'll explain why. So there are, and this ties into negotiations quite nicely, and you'll see why. So if you as a seller are pre-agreeing to say paying a buyer's agent, let's just say 2.5%, which is a very standard-ish rate here in the Bay. Although there's no standard, right? Because of, there's no price fixing, right? But like the most common amount of commission that's offered to buyer's agents pre-settlement was 2.5% by the sellers. And so as a seller, you might be thinking, I don't want to pay the buyer's agent anything at all. I wouldn't either. Or, okay, I'll pay the 2.5%, I'll pay 2, or I'll pay 1.5. And if you meet with an agent, they might, coach you to offer a certain amount. Now, we can't advertise it publicly on the MLS, but if a buyer's agent calls me and asks me, how much commission are you offering? And we tell them a certain amount, that actually puts you in a weaker position. And I'll explain why. Let's just say that this buyer's agent calls and asks how much commission we're offering. And we just said for ease, 3%, round numbers. We're offering 3%. Awesome, great. Well, here's the issue with that. Is that the buyer's agent might have a buyer broker agreement signed with their buyer for 2%. Now, you might be thinking, okay, no problem. 2%, they're going to collect 2%. Not so fast, because there's nothing that says the buyer's agent can't go back to their buyer and said, hey, Mr. Buyer, how would you like a bunch of free furniture? Buyer's going to be like, well, how are we going to do that? Well, instead of the 2% that we initially agreed to, for this house, let's sign a buyer broker at 3%, and then I will rebate you half that percentage, right? Half that point to you so that you get a 0.5% and I'll keep an extra 0.5%. So now I get paid 2.5 and you keep a 0.5 point. What buyer wouldn't say yes to that? Because you just volunteered an amount of money that the buyer's agent did not actually earn because they didn't agree to that with their buyer. The buyer agreed to 2%. And so here's what you should be doing as a seller in this new environment when it comes to negotiating the commission. Same principle of any and all, we want to accept any and all offers. We want to be super inviting. We also want to be super inviting of the terms. At the end of the day, what matters is your bottom line, not how much commission you're paying to the buyer's agent. So whenever a buyer's agent is approaching me and asking me how much are your sellers willing to offer, my answer is the seller is willing to entertain any and all offers with any and all commission percentages. Whatever commission you put on there, we will entertain it and we'll factor it into the decision-making process. See, now here's the thing. At that point in time, what's the buyer's agent going to do? They're going to submit an offer with the commission percentage that they agreed to with their buyer, right? Because they just want the seller to cover what they agreed to with their buyer. In all likelihood, there might be exceptions to that rule, but like 9 times out of 10, after telling the buyer's agent just submit whatever offer with whatever commission percentage, you agreed to with your buyer, they're going to submit an offer, and alongside that, a cooperating broker compensation agreement that says, hey, the seller is going to pay the buyer's agent 2% or 2.5% or whatever it is. At the end of the day, we have no idea what the buyer and the buyer's agent have agreed to. And so unless you know that for sure as a seller, you don't want to throw a number out in advance. Again, the person who throws out the number first is the one who loses. So as a seller, you actually have the upper hand now because you no longer have to pre-advertise any commission up front. And so this is actually a very beautiful thing. At the end of the day, to make the transaction as smooth as possible, you want to be able to offset some or all of the buyer's burden when it comes to paying their agent. However, we don't need to get that number away in advance. We can figure that out when the buyer and the buyer's agent come to the table and say, this is our offer, this is the price, and this is the commission that my buyer's agent is going to be receiving. If that works for us, great. If we want more money, then we counter price first before we start playing with commission, right? But we play exclusively with the price because at the end of the day, what matters isn't the offering price. That doesn't matter. The offer price doesn't matter. The commission doesn't matter. What matters is your bottom line. And so that's really what we want to factor into our decision making is, if the buyer's agent wants 10%, great, let them have 10% as long as we're getting what we want, right? So that's what we want to remember as negotiators going into this new market in this new era where there's going to be lots of ideologies and lots of people saying like, oh, we should do it this way or you should do it that way. The last thing that you want to do as a seller is give away your number in advance. You always want to keep that close to vest. I'll look at any offer with any commission percentage because it's true. If they're willing to pay you 10% over market value, like if your neighbor sold for $2 million and they're willing to pay you 2.25, but they want their agent to, walk away with a 4% commission, let them. Right? You're still making way more money. And so that's kind of what I want to drive home here is that the commission doesn't matter unless you make it matter. And the only way that you make it matter is by giving the buyer's agent the competitive advantage by giving them a number up front. Last note, and then I'll move on. And this is important because this is a brand new law and there's lots of variables here, but let's just take the reverse or the opposite real quick. Let's say that you're offering a really low commission. Like, let's just say that we're not cooperating with agents. If you're saying like, hey, we're not offering any commission. Well, for some buyers, a seller's refusal to pay their buyer's agent might make it financially impossible for them to afford closing on your home at the price that you want, right? And so it would be much easier for them to bake that commission into the loan versus having to pay the commission out of pocket, right? And so baking it into the loan is going to be a lot easier for most buyers, especially in the sub $2 million price range. Once we get over 2 million, there's more liquidity there. People have more cash, but generally speaking, sub 2 million, you're going to see some liquidity issues when it comes to being able to pay 20%, right? For the down payment plus an additional 3%. Some people might get tight there. And so as a buyer, if an agent says, my seller is not going to cooperate with your agent, my seller is not going to pay your agent, then the buyer might walk away and not even write an offer. And that's ultimately going to cost you money down the line because, again, we want to have as many offers as possible. We want to have as much competition as possible because competition drives price. And so that is the key principle here. All of these things, the marketing, the pricing, and the negotiations are all designed to drive as much attention and as much traffic and as many offers as possible to the home because offers create competition and competition drives price. Wow, this is a long video. If you've made it this far in the video and you are not yet subscribed, what are you waiting for? Click the subscribe button, hit the notification bell to get notified every single time we post a new video just like this one. That's it for this one, folks. Again, if you're a home seller or a home buyer in today's marketplace and you're looking for some free advice, some free strategy on how to go about your home search or your home sale, you can text the word consultation to the number down below. I'll send you a Zoom link and we can get on Zoom and hash out that strategy for you and for your family. This is Danny Gould, everyone. I'm selling Silicon Valley, and I will catch all of you in the next video.